Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of DMP. So today it is just your host, me, no guest today, and we're going to be kind of talking about being your own worst enemy. Now, I know on a lot of previous episodes, I feel like we talked more about, habits and different ways of thinking, but just kind of ways to, a little bit of motivation on how to spice up your life and kind of have a little bit of a glow up just in your day to day. So today I kind of wanted the episode to be more about self-reflection, in a way, kind of more how you're treating yourself internally versus, a lot of external things. It's a new month, June is gone. Here's July. Hopefully everybody had a good June. I feel like that's a good month. It's like summer, and summer is always a fun time. But anyways, going into the new month, I feel like it's kind of like a fresh start. At least that's kind of how I view it in my mind. So, what better to do with a new month and doing something with it than to grow, I feel like if you are happy with who you are as a person, as an individual, I feel like everything else kind of follows. So if you're just happy about your life and you feel like you're continuously growing, I feel like naturally that just brings way more opportunities. So that's kind of why I wanted to have this episode. Mainly, I feel like whenever you think about being your own worst enemy, or at least what I think about, is how the only person stopping you from doing something or from achieving something is you. So I feel like a lot of times it's so easy for us to come up with excuses, oh, I just can't do that, or someone else is better at that than me, or oh, what is someone gonna think if I do this, or I just don't have enough time. Or some people are just genuinely oh no, I'm too scared to do that. There's just so many different excuses, but I feel like what we fail to kind of notice with a lot of those is that really that's something that we're coming up with on our own as a reason why we didn't do something or why we're not doing something. And in reality, it's just our own, our own reasoning, our own limitations that we're putting on ourselves. And so I think that's something important to realize and kind of just acknowledge sometimes whenever you are saying an excuse, or why maybe if you think about what you're doing in life or what's been going on, what are the actual reasons behind it, and what do you feel is keeping you from being where you want to be. And a lot of times it's something that's going on with us internally, even though it's so easy to just kind of blame it on something external. And kind of touching on, that self-awareness of realizing whenever we're doing this comes to another point, how are we talking to ourselves? I think this is a good point, and I might have touched on it in another episode, because I've been kind of big on this lately, but just kind of realizing how we actually speak to ourselves. A lot of times we're way nicer and more open, and I don't know, just if you're talking to a friend or family or someone, even someone random, if people ask for advice, a lot of times we're try to really think about what's going to be best for them, and you try to say something, and you feel you try to understand, I guess you're understanding about the other person. And I feel we lose that in ourselves a lot. So if we didn't complete something, if we didn't do something the way we wanted to do it, or maybe the outcome wasn't what we were expecting, or even if we set a bunch of goals for ourselves and maybe we didn't reach all those goals, even just oh, I wanted to wake up early in the morning and I slept in, I I use that as an example because that's something that like goes on with me. But it's like, if you start off your morning immediately being like, oh my gosh, I'm so mad at myself, I couldn't even do this small thing that I wanted to do. It is always good to have goals and to be determined to meet them. Not saying that you shouldn't do that, but you also have to think about how you're speaking to yourself. If you're starting your day off with, oh my gosh, I'm so mad at myself, I couldn't even do this, or I can't do this, then you're kind of setting the tone for the rest of your day, and in turn, just your life in general, if that's how you started out. And so I think it's important to be kind to ourselves. You do want to have like a balance with this though. You don't always just want to create excuses for yourself, like in the sense of like, oh, it doesn't even matter, why did I even set this goal? That's not what I'm trying to say, but more of just like, you know what, we didn't do it today, but we'll get them in the morning. We can do it tomorrow, or maybe I didn't complete this today, but just because I didn't complete that doesn't mean that I failed. Let me succeed in this. Let me go on to the next thing that's on my list. I guess it's more about like not stopping that momentum and putting yourself in that positive feedback loop where it's, one thing after the other, a domino effect of good instead of bad. And so I think like going into this topic, it's just like a lot of discouragement is brought upon ourselves. This kind of goes into the topic before about like blaming things on other things or other people, like with the excuses. A lot of times we feel like if we put something out there, or we do something, that we're going to be judged by someone and they're going to be like, oh, what are they doing? And we kind of think that in our head, but it's just crazy to think about, that's probably something that we're projecting. We might feel that about ourselves, or maybe we have to work on confidence, or, and I think that first step of, having that confidence is realizing how we are talking to ourselves internally and not being so hard on ourselves. It's fine to have love for yourself even whenever you're talking internally, and not always just go straight to a negative thing. I had this one little like course for work and that I had to go into, and they brought up the point like, if someone got a bad work review, like like the end of the year little things, and someone that was close to you, like your friend or whatever, got a bad one and they talked to you about it, you're probably not going to be like, you know what, you deserved that, and I'm glad that they noticed that about you, and you haven't actually been doing a good job at work, and I don't know why you would think that they would say something different to you. I don't know if that's just me, I guess. I don't think I would be like that with a close friend, being that harsh on them and saying stuff like that. And so why would you do that to yourself too? If something bad happened, you got a bad review, a lot of times, like, you think what you would say to someone else, and then you think about what you would say to yourself. Sometimes whenever you think of it in that type of way of what would I say to someone else versus what do I actually say to myself, you're way more harsh whenever it comes to what you would say to yourself versus like advice that you would give to someone else, or, comfort that you would give to someone else. And another thing that kind of falls into that internal thinking is overthinking. I feel like this is something that a lot of us do, and it like really ties in perfectly with being your own worst enemy. Sometimes we like can think of one situation and we immediately think worst case scenario, or our mind just goes crazy and wonders, and I feel like it never ends up going towards the good path. It's a lot of times thinking about what could go wrong or what someone is doing, or it's like those one like little like Instagram reels or TikToks or whatever, just the video memes where it's like a oh, the girl's like, he's probably out cheating or with some other girl, and then the video is like actually like these guys hooking a potato up to their ceiling fan, like it's always something like that. But just in reality, a lot of times overthinking just only makes the situation worse. And I know, like, you're probably thinking like, well, I can't control my overthinking, stuff like that. And I definitely get that, and I still very much have an issue with overthinking. I feel like that's one of like my worst traits, and it's just not easy to control. And something that I've been doing that has kind of helped is just kind of like, whenever you find your mind wandering and continuously thinking about the negative or worst case scenario about something, you can kind of just ask yourselves like actual questions and have that internal monologue with yourself. I know it sounds weird. You also have to allow yourself time to like, have this monologue with yourself and kind of just actually be in thought. So, not trying to distract yourself, but just ask yourself actual questions like, is this even something that I can control? If it's not something that I can necessarily control the outcome of, what can I do to feel, maybe not feel in control, but what else can I control about the situation? I feel like reasonings why we overthink a lot is because there's so many unknowns. So just realize what you can actually know. Like, oh, I know that I could do this and that'll be my best. Or, if I do this, then I know this will happen. Think about what you can control over the situation versus what you can't. And then another thing is, like, am I just projecting, is like what I feel, like what we talked about earlier, is like what I feel like someone's judgment, like what someone's judgment would be, or their perception of me if I do this. Is that something that I actually feel like they're thinking, or is that because I feel that about like myself, Sometimes we just have to heal from certain things or raise our confidence up, or, we just kind of have to be more positive versus negative in our thoughts. And I think those are, just a couple of questions that I feel like help me whenever I feel like I'm overthinking. But I definitely think just figuring out, like, do trial and error of figuring out like what you can do and what works for you. Because if you do struggle with overthinking, I know that it's probably a huge hindrance, because I know it is with me. Whenever you're just going through a situation, I feel like it definitely stops you and kind of like keeps you in a stagnant area. And speaking of stagnant, another topic that I wanted to kind of go into, and kind of the last one for being your own worst enemy, is if you're allowing yourself to really grow to your fullest potential. I think that's a huge part of, self-love, is realizing your potential and actually working towards that instead of just being stagnant. And I think like if a lot of us ask this question to ourselves, I feel like if we answered it 100% honestly, I think a lot of us, the answers would be no. And this is definitely not meant to be like a jab to anyone. I just feel like it's truly just the truth sometimes, like especially with kind of how we're programmed to live our day to day, and just the typical thinking of the world. I think it's maybe becoming a little bit more open of like what your path should be, but for the most part, it's like people are, they go to school, go to college, get a job, get a house, get married, have a family. And like, there's just so much more that goes into life, and, career immediately isn't everything. And a career doesn't have to mean a 9-to-5. There's so many areas. And I think a lot of times we think it's so black and white, but anyways, just asking yourself, are you allowing yourself to grow to your fullest potential? distractions are a huge thing with TV, gaming. People are on their phones like almost constantly. Like, I saw this post of someone who like went on like a week retreat with like 50 other people, and they, which is ironic because I saw it by scrolling on social media, but they went on like this retreat where they gave up their phones, and there was no TVs or anything like that, like no electronics at all, for like 7 days with a bunch of like strangers in this place. And it's like a program. And like, he just kind of talked about how refreshing it actually was, and how, like, he even brought up like he felt closer with those people. Like, they did like group therapy and stuff like that. He said he felt closer like to some of those people, or like he learned more about those people than some of his actual like really close friends. And I think that's like just such a crazy but true statement that, with everything that we have at our fingertips, I feel like sometimes it can be hard to be present and to be in the moment, and also to like not distract yourself. I don't know, it's just so easy, and it kind of puts you into a comfort zone, which is another thing that I wanted to talk about with this aspect. I feel like oh my goodness, I need to stop saying, I'm so sorry. It's my like my best filler word right now. It's my newest one, and it's from watching, part of it is from watching Sons of Anarchy, because I don't want to spoil any type of people for you. If you've never seen that show, watch that show. But anyways, going into, comfortability. Oh my gosh, I said it again. Guys, ooh. But anyways, going into comfortability. So I feel like a lot of people just don't really take too many risks in life anymore. And I think part of that stems from the distractions and just ways to kind of like, people will smoke, and it's just easy sometimes to be kind of content because you're worried about what might happen if you make a change, make a move, if you will. And so I think that's another thing that we kind of have to get over ourselves and kind of think about why we're not doing that. Like, if our life isn't exactly how we dreamed it to be and how we want it to be, why is it not? Like, what is getting in the way? And a lot of times it's going to be something that we can do or work on. And I guess that's really like a good way to kind of close out this episode is, we really do have more control than a lot of us think on being exactly where we want to be in life, whether it's how we are as human beings, what we're gaining, like what we have, or, what position we're in. There is a lot of unknowns, and obviously, we don't always get the best, the best hand, best cards. Goodness. But it's kind of late. But anyways, you don't always have the best cards, or there's just a lot of unknowns still. But I think it's just more focusing on what we can control and what we can do to be better, and just kind of being more aware of kind of being our own worst enemy. I feel like we're the ones who are the perfectionists on ourselves, and we're the ones that are our own worst critics. And so sometimes just realizing, I need to be a little bit more kind on myself. I need to realize that I truly believe in myself and that I can do it. And thinking, I might just be overreacting or overthinking about like what someone might think if I do this, or just overthinking on the, what will come of this situation if it's something that you really wanted to do. Or just realizing that, I've been distracting myself. I need to just get focused and do this for myself, whether it's starting to do something that you've wanted to do for 10 minutes a day or doing it for an hour, it's whatever. It's just as long as we're kind of still working on ourselves and being more aware. So I'm sorry if this episode felt a little bit, like you're just kind of running around in circles. I kind of just I had this idea of doing this episode, but it was kind of like a while ago, and I still wanted to touch on the topic, but all the ideas weren't as like fresh in my head as I wanted to talk about. And even when I was trying to, kind of write some ideas of like what I did want to speak about, I was like, I don't know. But anyways, I'm still glad that I was able to kind of touch on this topic, and I hope there's still some good points in there that you all enjoyed, or that you might want to try out for yourself, or just think about more. So I hope everybody has a good rest of their day. Happy days off, hopefully for July 4th. Refresh, relax, and I will see you guys later.